segment 6.6. We will, in this discussion, look a little bit at timing. When does it make sense to actually invest, be reaping some of the fruits of your labors, things of that nature? The questions, I'm on page 266 of the textbook. The three questions I have include: when do you apply for patent strategies? Second, when do you implement the effects of the patent strategies? And then third, when do you invest heavily into the patent portfolio? So each of these we will discuss in the context of the size of the company. So to a certain extent, the answer to this depends on what life cycle you are at. So if you're a startup, you'll be focusing heavily on generating as much as possible patent assets. If you're a larger type company, a lot more of your investment may be going into the question of how do we reap the benefits of that which we have already filed. So again, the answer to this is based off of the context of the life cycle of the company and where it is that they in particular are at. Two global things I want to emphasize that I have indicated before, but just want to draw your attention. You apply patent strategies, generally speaking, at the outset when you're actually writing your application, because how you write your application will dictate what can actually be derived therefrom many years down the line. So you implement the effects of the patent strategies after grant. So after there is an issuance of the patent and you can then assert the rights to a patent, keep in mind that you do not have actionable granted rights from the government until you actually have an issued patent. Prior to that time, it's just theoretical rights. And then there's some case law even relating to that. But it's after you have a granted patent that you can actually go down to a courthouse and sue on a patent. Prior to that time frame, you can approach a company, but if no rights have been granted by the government yet, then you cannot in fact take action on it yet. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the phases of development. Now, I've broken down phases of development into three different stages. I put the acronym here, GPS, which comes down to a generating stage, a positioning stage, and a securing stage. And this flow of going from one stage to another stage is often how it is that companies operate. If you're a startup, you'll be thinking immediately about, we need to be generating, we need to be protecting that which we have. If you're a mid-sized type company, you're looking at the company with respect to other companies in the marketplace. You're saying, how can we position ourselves better in the marketplace? And last but not least, securing your position in the marketplace or securing your rights may generate the question, well, do we need to go on the offensive? How can we better defend ourselves against assertions that are out there as well? So with that in mind, let's take a look at generate. Generate includes developing and fostering research and creative ideas. Now that goes without saying, if you're a company and you're trying to generate, that should probably be a lot of your research and creative ideas. But I think looking at this from a different point of view, many companies will have what's called a harvesting session, where they are trying to take all the inventive concepts and they have one session where they, in essence, duke it out between all the inventors and the attorneys. And so the inventors come to the table. Again, it depends on the company that you're working with, but some companies don't always have the opportunity to interface with the attorneys. They may be overseas. It may be some distance away from them, and so they'll get them all in the same room together, and it's this intense harvesting session. And I've done it repeatedly in the past, where you literally walk out of the door at the end of the day with about in the range of 20 plus applications ready for you to now do work on. So it can be a very rich opportunity, very time efficient and effective, to pull inventors together and to just be generating, based off of their expertise, what they feel is potentially inventive. Now, another thing that in the generate phase that you want to keep in mind, this goes back to a little bit of the ABCDs that we talked about before as far as the management, in that you need to consider the policies that the company is actually implementing. So in the generate phase, you want to have policies in place within the company that actually promote, incentivize inventors to invent. So Thomas Edison, from this point of view, I thought was a master, and he really is a master at what he did as far as bringing these inventive concepts and bringing them to light and then turning them over to potentially marketable ideas. So he had a goal for a lot of his teams of having a small invention once every 10 days and then having a large type invention once every 6 months. And for him, I think that this was just a little bit of a statistical type analysis. If you want to get to the big invention, there needs to be a set number of smaller inventions that are leading up to that larger invention. So just based off of the statistics of if I want to get one big one every 6 months, then that kind of works out to having all these little inventive concepts that over time may either be building up into one large global concept, or two, just the fact that they're always trying to innovate, it increases the chances that, one time out of, every 6 months, you're actually hitting it big. There's a quote here, Thomas Edison's most important consideration when deciding whether to begin a project was to determine what would be the ultimate practical commercial application. In other words, what was going to be the product and how could he make money from it? Edison once said, "I always invented to obtain money to go on inventing." So for him, the money really wasn't the goal, just a means to ensure that he could continue his work. And he very much did that, I think, in a right manner, in that he would set up his manufacturing plants literally right next to his R&D center. So it can go from R&D into manufacturing very quick and fast. He could turn it over to the market and actually be turning a profit much faster than many of the other outfits of the day. So Edison indicated as well that when an invention was, or about him, when an invention was perfected, Edison immediately proceeded forward with patenting the device. Now, if you compare and contrast that with today's culture and market, we are under, when Edison was alive, it was under our first to invent system. When the present day, we are under our first to file system. And so there is very much sometimes an impetus to run to the patent office just as soon as you possibly can. So it depends a little bit on how it is that Edison would have defined perfected, working out every single kink or just getting the global inventive concept with some details in place. And depending on the company, some companies want all details to be worked out fully before they go for the rights. Others are very cognizant of the first to file suit system. And if there are a lot of competitors in the same space, they very well may be running towards that patent office all at the same speed. So in other words, they may not necessarily cut corners, but rather than going for the 100-page type specification, they may be more satisfied with a 20-page discussion that really goes at a high level what it is that was inventive. So it talks about Edison was able to turn out new products on a timetable and a scale that dwarfed his earlier accomplishments. So at the West Orange complex, that was one of his research center, they invented alkaline storage battery, movie camera, electric pen, first talking pictures, mimeograph, the fluoroscope. They made many major improvements to the phonograph. So, and rather than selling the rights to another outfit, Edison just went ahead and actually produced and manufactured a lot of this himself. So after we've generating is all about taking these inventive concepts and pursuing some protection on them. Then we need to go to the second phase, and that is positioning. And in the position phase is when you simply ask the question, what is the value of the company? Now, I indicate here that there needs to be some strategic planning, but that's essentially what it is. As a company, you're taking a step back and saying, we have this patent portfolio, what do we do with it? What is it? What is the value really to our company? And there's two different perspectives that you can look at with respect to this. The first is intrinsic value. And intrinsically, you can look at your own portfolio and you can divide the assets into groups and categories. And this may, in fact, even coincide with, for example, the B of ABCD of the intellectual asset management, in that you may be building and organizing a structure as to how it is that things are divided, such that when you get to this positioning phase, you may already have some organization in place where you already know and have already ranked the value of internally of those assets. And so the intrinsic value is looking at what is what inventions are most valuable to the company. And from that point of view, you could be looking at products and where the sales are going. If you have a particular product line and your sales are going up there, you say, this is really our important product line, and we need to make sure that we prioritize that the patent assets relating to this in our portfolio really are maintained. Not only that, but we may want to consider filing additional continuations. But this is the point of view of, here's our portfolio and what is the value of the portfolio to the company itself, to our products, to our lines, things of that nature. The second perspective would simply be looking extrinsically, where you're looking outside of the company to the marketplace and you're asking the same question in essence, namely, what is the value of our portfolio now with respect to the marketplace? And so, for example, going back to my earlier example, if the company is looking at its product line and saying, oh, this is going up or the product line is going down, that may determine to a certain extent whether or not you feel internally you should pursue or not pursue additional protection relating to those core concepts. If you're looking extrinsically, let's assume for purposes of our discussion that intrinsically you valued a certain patent family as being less valuable to the company. So intrinsically you're saying, you know what, we're just not really doing that product line anymore, it's less valuable. But then you look in the marketplace and you see that there is potential infringement of that family widespread. Suddenly you have two different points here. You say, all right, this is not as valuable to our company, it is valuable to the marketplace. And then that opens up additional options. Do you want to go ahead and assert in the marketplace based off of the protection you have? Or two, do you want to do a strategic sale where you notice that there's a company that's up and coming, that's emerging, that's in this marketplace that is using the technology, in which case you could approach them and say, you know what, we have some protection through this granted patent family and that is applicable to what it is that you're doing, and we thought that you may be interested in actually acquiring the rights to this. So again, when you're looking at positioning yourself, you can look internally, intrinsically, as well as extrinsically to the market around you. And by conducting both perspectives and looking at it from two perspectives, it helps ensure that you're not just in test tube focusing on what is valuable to the company irrespective or respective of anything else out there. Rather, it allows you to see both internally and externally to then actually be in a position where you can determine the value. As far as securing, a portfolio that has obviously been carefully developed needs to then be maintained. And this goes back to when we were talking about before the ABCDs. You want to make sure that you are in continually maintaining once you have established ownership of the asset. So here, we want to ensure that things are being maintained, that things are being enforced through litigation, through negotiations, licensing efforts, things of that nature. And the securing stages, in essence, when you take a step back, you've already generated, you've already positioned yourself, and now you're asking the question, do we get anything in return? So this is the big money question, and the securing phase is all about that. So you're all looking at, okay, what is going to stick in the marketplace and what players actually may be applicable based off of the inventions that we have protected over the years. Now, the perspective is in the secure stage. Again, I indicated that all this is dependent a little bit on the context of the timeline of the company. And here, the perspective changes based off of the size of the company. If you're in a company with 30,000 plus assets, and you get an additional 100, it's another drop in the bucket in essence. But that being said, if your entire portfolio is only 100 assets, then you may very much be concentrated on just preserving those 100 assets as much as possible. So you're looking to the competition, to the marketplace, internally to your own products. And I think one other thing to keep in mind with respect to positioning and then the securing phase is looking at the value of those assets. Now, I've mentioned value a few times. We'll have a lecture later on in Module 7, I believe, that will look in particular at how do we actually value patents? Because that's a hard question. There's a lot of theoretical formulations that you can rely on for that. For purposes of our discussion right now, we're just in essence asking the question whether or not it adds value to the company or adds value to the marketplace, whatever that is. And obviously the higher the number, the greater the importance we would at least attach to that.